This is BBC News. I'm Christian Fraser at Blenheim Palace, the family home of Winston Churchill, where President Trump will dine this evening with the Prime Minister and selected business leaders. The headlines. The US President and his wife Melania arrived in the UK this afternoon for a total of 4 days. Later they'll meet the Prime Minister, and tomorrow they meet the Queen at Windsor before leaving for Scotland.
I'm Anita McVeigh at Regent's Park in central London, where Donald Trump will spend the night at the US ambassador's residence. Tens of millions of pounds are being spent on policing as protests are expected.
I'm Rita Chakrabarti. The other main stories. Detailed plans are published for the UK's post-Brexit relationship with the EU.
It strikes the right balance, it's innovative, it's ambitious, it is pragmatic, but we're looking for that win-win with the UK and our European friends.
26.5 million people watch England's heartbreaking World Cup semi-final defeat to Croatia. And Serena Williams cruises to her 10th Wimbledon final after dispatching Julia Gergis in straight sets. Good evening. Our main story this evening is President Trump's arrival in Britain for a 4-day visit. He flew in from a fractious NATO meeting in Brussels at lunchtime. Later, he'll attend a dinner with Theresa May and with politicians and business people at Blenheim Palace. Well, my colleague Christian Fraser joins us from there right now.
Yes, hello, welcome to Oxfordshire. It is some 18 months since the invitation was first extended, but the President is finally here. He's been to 17 countries before landing in the UK, and perhaps not the visit he had first envisaged. It isn't the full state visit, but rather what they prosaically call a working visit. So none of the trappings, none of the state dinner, the procession up the Mall. There will not be an address to the Commons. But when he leaves the home of the US ambassador later today in central London, he will come here to Oxfordshire, to Blenheim Palace. He arrived in the UK at lunchtime today with his wife, the First Lady Melania, following some rather fractious exchanges at the NATO summit in Brussels. Our correspondent Richard Galpin has been following the events of the day.
More than 18 months after becoming president, Donald Trump flew into Stansted Airport this afternoon at the start of what's been described as a working, not a state visit. From there, he was taken by helicopter to London, flying over the city centre before coming in to land. He and the First Lady, Melania Trump, being greeted by the US Ambassador, Woody Johnson. The preparations for this first official visit by Mr. Trump to Britain have included massive security measures costing millions of pounds. This is Regent's Park, where he'll spend the night in the US Ambassador's residence. An opinion poll on the eve of this visit showed 50% disagreed with him coming here. And already, following a fractious NATO meeting in Brussels this morning, the US President has stirred up controversy here, wading into the vexed Brexit debate and whether the government's new approach was what people had voted for.
I would say that, Brexit is Brexit. It's not like, I guess when you use the term hard Brexit, I assume that's what you mean. The people voted to break it up, so I would imagine that's what they'll do, but maybe they're taking a little bit of a different route, so I don't know if that's what they voted for. I just want the people to be happy.
He's also claiming his tough line with other NATO members about meeting military spending commitments has worked.
For years, presidents have been coming to these meetings and talked about the expense, the tremendous expense for the United States, and tremendous progress has been made. Everyone's agreed to substantially up their commitment. They're going to up it at levels that they've never thought of before.
Back here, activists opposed to his policies are getting ready to stage demonstrations in different parts of the country. In London, there'll also be this blimp with an image of Trump as a baby floating over Westminster. Protest leaders accuse him of immaturity as well as racism and bigotry.
When racists and extreme right-wingers are on the march, you don't sit back, you don't just sit there hoping it'll all go away. You take to the streets, you mobilise, and you fight back. We hope it will put pressure on the government, that they will see, the moral leadership that they're failing to provide is out there on the streets instead.
But his itinerary, including a dinner this evening with senior ministers and business leaders here at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, ensures he'll be kept away from protesters. The government hopes the talks here and at Chequers tomorrow will bolster relations. Mr. Trump's supporters are confident.
I think Donald Trump will have wonderful and fruitful conversations with the Prime Minister, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's president or who's Prime Minister. The long-standing relationship between our two countries will endure. It has endured for centuries and will do so for time to come.
And yet, this is likely to be a very fraught visit, with thousands of people gearing up to protest and irritation at government level about Mr. Trump's comments on Brexit before he even arrived here. Richard Galpin, BBC News.
Now, you will notice that there is an absence of a big Baroque structure behind me, no sign of Blenheim Palace, and a roundabout on the A44 is not the most picturesque backdrop, but this is the extent of the cordon. It's a mile outside Woodstock, and that tells you just how tight security is going to be this evening. In fact, just along the A44, every 100 metres, there is a policeman on guard. Police drafted in from all around the country, but we were treated a little earlier to the entourage of the president, which arrived in good time, in fact about 5 hours before him. 30 odd cars in this convoy. Don't think because this is not a full state visit there isn't all the paraphernalia that comes with the president. There certainly is, and you'll see in that convoy that the beast is there. That's the armoured limo that he travels in when he's travelling around in a convoy, and they tell me in fact that there were 750 rooms booked for his entourage. With him, of course, the Secret Service, and also one of 5 rotating military personnel who carry what they know as the football, the nuclear codes that the president takes wherever he goes. So tonight he'll be here at Blenheim for a dinner with 150 of the top CEOs from the country, those businessmen with links to the UK and also to the United States. But at the moment he is resting at Winfield House, the home, of course, of the US ambassador in Regent Park, and there for us is Anita McVeigh. Anita.
Christian, thank you very much. Just as there's no sign of Blenheim Palace behind you, there's no sign of Winfield House from where I am either, by virtue of the security cordon that's been thrown up around the US ambassador's residence, whereas Christian was just saying the President and First Lady currently are and where they will be spending the night tonight. You can see that 9-foot-high fence that's been erected around this area, many roads, of course, in central London, closed off while the President is here. Just a small sign, if you like, of the huge security and policing operation, the biggest policing operation in the UK for more than a decade that's in place for the duration of this visit. So the President is spending a few hours here. He'll be heading off to Blenheim Palace a little later this evening. While he's been here, he's been meeting members of staff from the US Embassy and their families, and of course this follows that rather fractious engagement with NATO allies at the summit in Brussels over the last 24 hours or so. Well, with me here at Regent's Park is the Guardian columnist Owen Jones, and we saw him just a moment ago in Richard Galpin's report. And Owen, obviously we know that you're not in favour of this visit, but President Trump is here. Is it time to be pragmatic?
Well, what we're protesting against is what he represents, the racism, the bigotry, the misogyny, and what we've seen is he's legitimised so much of that racism and bigotry. The far right is on the rise across Europe, from Italy to Germany to Austria, and in this own country this Saturday fascists will march in London, many of them with Trump placards. He himself retweeted racist propaganda by Britain First, a fascist British organisation. So it's really important that we take a stand against that racism. He's just a kind of one of the most striking examples of it. Of course, at the same time, we're going to make it clear that we have no intention of allowing this government of turning Britain into a puppet of Donald Trump. We did that with George W. Bush many years ago. It ended in the calamity of Iraq. There were those around Donald Trump who want a war with Iran. We've seen as well them marching out of the Paris Agreement on climate change, and they're the biggest polluter on earth. In history, in fact, that's a threat to all of us. So there's so many issues, so many reasons why we have to protest, not just against Donald Trump, but about what he actually represents.
So when people say that the relationship between the UK and the US transcends any individuals who happen to be in the office of Prime Minister and President at any given time, do you accept that?
Well, you've answered your own question. The special relationship is not with Donald Trump, it's with the United States of America and its people. The majority of people didn't even vote for the guy. Millions of people in America stand in a different tradition. It's the tradition of America that took on slavery, that's fought in the civil rights movement, that fought for women's rights, that fought for LGBTQ rights. Those are the people on a different side of America, if you like. And I should note, by the way...
But nonetheless, he was elected.
Yes, but that doesn't mean if you're elected that nobody can protest or criticise or scrutinise you. Now, what we're going to see in this protest is people, including Americans, I should say, we've been bombarded with Americans living in Britain, as well as few messages of solidarity across the continent. But as I've said, it's so easy to get lost in the theatre and the pantomime of Donald Trump as the individual. We've had the Donald Trump pantomime now for 2 years. What we need to stand against is the values he represents. And I think the majority, in fact I know from the polling, regard his sexism and his racism and his bigotry